What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and today I want to do something a little different. I want to make a comprehensive list of the most important tips and things for becoming a better TCG player, in my opinion. These are all things that I do and have helped me a lot become a better TCG player, and I want to share that knowledge with you guys since I know that a lot of people who watch my content and YouTube content in general, as well as a lot of people within my community Discord, are newer or relatively newer players or even older returning players who are trying to get caught up with the modern meta and the modern game. And so I want to make this list on, in my opinion, the best ways to become a better TCG player. And though this will focus primarily on the Pokemon TCG, all of these skills and different things will be applied to other TCGs as well. So if your TCG of choice is either Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Lorcana or the One Piece TCG, all of it still applies in those individual sections. You may just have to change a couple different things based on some of the tips that I'll cover when we get to them. If this is content that you want to see more of on the channel, or if you want a deeper dive into any of these tips, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below, and I can make a video kind of elaborating even further on any of these individual tips or, videos like this in the future. Lastly, just be sure if this is something you like to, like the video, comment, all that kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel. And lastly, if you are interested in a place to join the community Discord, all the information for that is down in the description below. But to get us started, we'll start with tip number 1. And tip number 1 is very simple. It's just talk to other players, ask questions, and actually participate in events. This is really important because it seems really simple, but it's actually kind of confounded into multiple pieces. I know a lot of players that'll go to a local, they'll play, but they don't actually talk to anybody, or after their match, they don't ask any questions. They just kind of get up and leave, or, they get up and report the match, and that's kind of it. If you're at an event, whether it be a locals or a regionals or anything, if you play and you lose, ask them what you could have done differently. Was there a mistake that you made that will make a difference in a future game? 9 out of 10 times, players are extremely nice and they'll be able to answer those questions for you. And also, even if you win, it's okay to kind of say like, hey, did you notice any mistakes in my play or anything like that? I think it's really important to ask these kind of conversations, even if you're not in a physical local. Whether you're playing a tournament online over Limitless, you have the chat. You can always ask your opponent things that you could have done differently. Aside from just in competition conversations, I think it's really important to go ahead and talk to just other players, be in the community, and just whether it's through Discord or your own local scene, talk to different players. On screen right now, I'll have kind of footage of how to find your locals from the Pokemon TCG website, as well as some footage of how to sign up for a Pokemon TCG tournament. If you've never done one before, you can go on limitless.com, and there's tons of tournaments you can join for free all the time. We even host some from the Discord every 2 weeks for anyone who wants to join it. So if you like my content, or even if you hate it and you want to participate in the tournaments, there's one every other week. So be sure to join the Discord and be on the lookout for those as I announce them throughout either on the content or in the Discord. But Limitless is a great place to find tournaments, as well as using the Pokemon website to find whatever locals and areas around you that have in-person events. I highly recommend being able to go to them if you have the opportunity, and if not, participating over Limitless, since exposing yourself to higher level competition is one of the easiest ways to kind of improve, but also will link you with other players who are already have more experience and are going to be able, and more often than not willing, to help you improve and find areas of your game that you may be struggling in or missing without even realizing it. Going into tip number 2, it's very simple, and that's use different decks. The easiest way to do this is, again, using Limitless. You'll see that Limitless comes up a lot. It's one of your strongest tools in order to use when it comes to TCG play. Go on Limitless and just look at what some of the best decks in the game are, and also just other decks that you're interested in. Copy the deck list. It's totally okay. There's a taboo against net decking. If you're just trying to understand and learn a deck, just copy the list. Don't get too creative about it. Don't go crazy. The most important part is why you want to look at other deck lists is not only to understand how they play and what cards are in them and what you have to look out for, but also playing the deck will help you understand much better how the deck functions when you're playing against it. If, let's say, for example, you're a Gardevoir player and you're really struggling with the Lugia matchup, well, try playing Lugia. Go on to Limitless, look at some deck lists, copy one over, and play it for yourself. See where the shortcomings of the deck are and where its power points are. Also, if you have the opportunity, play against somebody who's using Gardevoir. See how they play the matchup against you, and see if there's something that maybe they're doing that you're missing out on. And if your play could kind of mirror theirs as well. Something that's really important too with playing different decks is also it helps you understand on average what their lists kind of look like. For example, in something like the Raging Bolt matchup, if you play the deck a lot and you also look at their deck list, you'll notice that most of the time they're only running about one superior energy retrieval and maybe another regular energy retrieval on top of that. And so you can know if your opponent discards it for whatever reason or gets rid of it. Same thing for like their switch cards. Typically they're only playing 1 to almost in some cases 0. So you know if they discard them, okay, they don't have these as an option anymore, and that's something you can play around. So it's a lot of being better at the game is understanding what your opponent plays and about how many cards in their deck of certain types they also play. And the easiest way to do that is just to look at the list and try them out for yourself. See how they feel, see where they're weak, and see where the deck might struggle, and that'll give you an advantage when you come to actually playing against it. The third tip is playing solo games. I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but a lot of times being able to play solo games or use different tools and simulators can really help your game out a lot. Sometimes grinding games on the ladder or in tournament or whatever system you're playing in isn't actually that beneficial because you're just sitting there grinding, you're not actually really learning anything. What's important is that being able to use the in-game Pokemon TCG Live test hand feature is really nice because you can reshuffle your hands, reset it, kind of get an idea of how to play the best openings possible. But also on screen, I'm going to show a link to, or I'm going to have footage of one of the other simulators. I believe it's called like Masters or something like that. It'll be down in the description below. All the links for everything will be down in the description, as well as for the Pokemon website, as well as limitless.com and things like that. One of the things that's really important with the simulators is you can simulate against other top decks or whatever other inputted decks you want. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive to just play almost like solitaire, like just playing by yourself. But it's really important to do because it allows you to understand how your different hands can work in multiple different situations. You can kind of pick what you want in your hand and kind of how you want those hands to go if you're playing solo at your own table, if you have the cards in paper, or just, again, using simulators and things like that. So that way you can test out opening hands, you can run through different scenarios as well. What happens if your opponent has a certain type of board? Well, you can build it and play against it and kind of understand like maybe where the breaking points are. So a lot of playing solo is really, really beneficial to being able to not only understand your own deck, but also allows yourself to play out certain scenarios over and over until you know exactly how to play them. A lot of times you can have different points where you leave yourself open to boss when you don't need to. And the only way to do it is not only by recognizing that, but being able to play through what all your options are. What would make the difference is if you, like on your nest ball targets, or what you choose to discard for an Ultra Ball may come up and matter, and the only way you're going to know is by repeating those situations over and over again in solo, just making sure that you're able to do it. Also, in a solo game, you can play at your own pace. You don't have to worry about your opponent kind of, being annoyed that you're taking too long or whatever. You can take all the time you need just to think out your plays really slowly and really understand each play that you're making and why you're making them. And I think that's really important. So that's going to be tip number 3. Coming in at tip number 4, I think this is super important, and that's watch your own replays. Using tools like OBS or other screen recording systems are invaluable. Being able to watch your own replays is absolutely dramatic when it comes to being able to improve. This is important because you can not only watch your wins, but also your losses, and look for mistakes where maybe you didn't notice them originally, a play you could have gone back for. Even myself, with the YouTube channel that I run, this is huge for me. I get to upload videos, and all the time in almost every video you'll see in the comments somebody saying something I could have done differently or a better play, and a lot of times they're right. You won't see the play in the moment sometimes because you're either focused on something else or you're thinking about a different play you could make, and you'll miss an opportunity that was right in front of you. And the only way you'll know that that happened is by having the replay, being able to go back and see oh, this is a mistake I made. This is a tool or a tip that I need in order to, you know, kind of learn and get better for the next time I play. So I'm very grateful for a lot of the people that leave those kind of comments, because it does help me improve. And this is something that can be really invaluable for yourself to go back and watch your own replays. One of the other important part about being able to watch your own replays, especially in a loss, is see how your opponent won. What plays did they make? What choices did they do? They could have made a super smart comeback and maneuvered their energy, or went for certain kind of combinations of different tools and tricks that could be really good, that maybe is a play you never thought of before that now is available to you. So being able to watch your replays is almost invaluable, and there's a lot of different sources out there to be able to record your own gameplay. So be sure to definitely give that one a try. It's probably one of the easiest, or maybe not the easiest, but it's one of the easiest ones on this entire list to be able to do. And so I highly recommend it. It's maybe one of the most important things you can do on this entire list. Coming in at number 5, and this one sounds like a way more daunting task than it really is, but that's read every card and understand a card's value. When I say a card's value, what's important here is that I don't mean its monetary value. I don't mean how much it actually costs, whether that's an $80 card or a 5-cent card. What I mean is its value within the actual game and the meta itself. So for example, let's use a card like Manaphy. We all know that Manaphy is able to block bench damage, but what's important is the fact that how it blocks bench damage. It blocks damage counters being, like, it doesn't block damage counters being placed, something like Jirachi. So we know that if Lost Zone is really common, it's better to have Jirachi in your deck than it is to have Manaphy if the only Pokemon in the meta right now that can use Manaphy, or that Manaphy can block, is like Radiant Greninja. In comparison to a lot of other decks, then it's much better to have Jirachi. And so understanding where a card fits into the meta is extremely important, because some cards may seem really good, but not actually end up being very relevant. Another reason why you want to read every card is because some cards are really good, but they don't really appear like that at first value. A great example of this really becomes tech cards. Things like Cobalion from Silver Tempest was super good, because during the time when Charizard was super common, it allowed your basic Pokemon to hit for 30 more damage against dark types, and in some matchups that really played a difference. One of the other things that's important, or a great example, is in control decks. Now they play the Sandshrew from Pokemon 151. This card is really good because it stops your opponent from being able to shuffle things back into their deck, shutting off things like Palpad, and that's super critical. One of the other cards that came up really big was something like Minior, a card that got really, swept under the rug and nobody really cared until things like Snorlax Control came out, and everybody realized that Minior is really good because it allows you to switch in and it hits for weakness against the Snorlax, and so it actually worked out really well. Cards like this go completely underutilized until, we kind of forget about them, and then they're actually pretty good until, it just takes the right situation. But you may be able to discover those situations where they actually become powerful. And just by understanding what different cards and techs do, it allows you to kind of build your deck to a better meta than maybe your opponents will be prepared for, since you'll know counters and different cards and situations that can be really good to look for. Another example of this is like people being able to find pairings with like Frostlask and Munkidori in a much more competitive way because of the fact that they've already read the previous cards. They're already knowledgeable in what the cards are in the meta, and not only that, but what other past cards are and what they'll do, so they're able to find different combinations. For example, right now we see a lot of Rosamine's backup, and the reason why Roseanne's backup is so common is because of the fact that we want to be able to recycle certain A-Spec cards. That card went kind of underused for a very long time, but because people have already read it, they already kind of know what it does, they're able to retech it back into decks now that it's more relevant. And you can only do that because you read it before and you understand where a card can be placed in the meta and when it can become relevant, rather than kind of being late to the trend and losing out on games where you could have had a better list. So these are kind of my most important top 5 kind of things that I would recommend in order to become an overall better TCG player, especially when it comes to the Pokemon TCG, though like I said, a lot of these tips can pertain to other formats or other TCGs as well. So if this is something that you liked, like I said before, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section below if this is something that you'd want to see more of on the channel, or also if you'd want a dedicated video to any one of these tips individually. just so that way I can kind of show how they work or give a better in-depth explanation. Also, be sure to join the community Discord down in the comment section below, and be sure to look out for our next community tournament. And yeah, I think that's kind of it, everybody. So I will see you in the next video. Peace.